That gets you going, doesn't it?
It sure does. It's that jammy music, baby. Let's go. It's hashtag sports time, baby. Let's go.
Bye week, baby.
Yeah, here we
This is
are.
what we got.
Here we are. And we're not, obviously, this is recorded before we had a chance to get in the car. So let's just throw that out there. For those who are like, but Paul and Mario, I thought you said on the bye week you'd be in the car. We haven't gotten there yet.
I don't see a wheel. Okay. Don't worry. This is shortly after the victory. Honestly, if you want to know when we recorded it, it's shortly after the victory of the Kansas City Chiefs. So something came up during the post game, and obviously big talk about CMC. So we just wanted to kind of throw our 2 cents into the ring for everybody. So
yeah, and I don't want to sound hypocritical because I absolutely cut an episode saying that if you're Buffalo, CMC makes your football team a better team. So you should do what you got to do to make your football team a better team. But after the Kansas City game, I'm feeling a little odd about what I had said. So it's not revisionist history, but it's kind of like it is a little revisionist history. It's a little bit.
Well, I mean, the big question marks about it for me was always the numbers of the guys that you have to retain. How could you do that? And
from a salary perspective, you mean?
Yeah, and how much are you willing to give for a rental?
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, let's be honest. So
yeah, I think the Kansas City game, though, shows you something about this team that maybe makes a move like CMC. Of course, he's an outstanding player. You're going to be giving up a future asset and trading away draft picks. So unless you can get something less than a first-round pick, you're giving up future assets. For really what would effectively be a 1-year rental, you would likely just keep him and then cut him in the offseason. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and I understand that. But the Kansas City game said something to me that maybe we need to revise what Paul said on that episode a little bit. So I said you do it, right? I was like adamant, it makes your team better. But Devin Singletary did what he needed to do in the Kansas City game to beat who you were most concerned about. Like, you built this team to beat Kansas City. You beat Kansas City. You averaged 5 yards. How much did they average on the ground in the KC game?
I think, well, more specifically, Singletary was 5 yards a carry. Allen did what he does, so his numbers are always going to skew the rushing stats for the Buffalo Bills. But it's still a factor that you got to put into it when you talk about Josh Allen in this running game. So he is part of the running game. So as of right now,
right.
And for those of you that are saying, oh, future assets, just throw a fifth or a sixth in Carolina's way. Do we need to go through the list of players that are currently contributors to this team that are, I mean, Shakir, 5th rounder, just looking down the list. You got Hamlin, who's a 6th rounder. You got Gabriel Davis, who's a 4th rounder. Hodges is a 6th. Dane Jackson's a 7th.
Yeah.
Jaquan Johnson's a 6th. I believe Matt Milano was a 5th.
Right.
Teron Johnson was a 4th. So it's not like you're just throwing a guy that Bean and McDermott won't use. You're throwing away an asset. That's what Paul means by that. I mean, when you say if you want to give him draft capital, is like gold to Bean. So
well, and in the crux of building a successful team where you have high priced players, you have to be effective in those middle rounds. Buffalo's been very effective in those middle rounds.
Yes.
But you have to kind of keep the boat afloat there when you have, a $250 million quarterback and, you got another inside linebacker who's on the crux of $100 million deal. You got Diggs, who's making a ton of money. Gabe Davis is coming up on a contract year next year. Ed Oliver is coming up on, needing a contract. Like, there's a lot.
There is. And you know what, though? What is the cheapest way to acquire talent when you have a lot of players that acquire a lot of money or require a lot of money is the fact that those draft picks are the cheapest option. It's not like you can sign those guys and then just sign a cheap free agent somewhere. That's not how it really works so much. So,
yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. So let's pull back a little bit and talk about whether CMC and Devin Singletary are ultimately equal in this offense. I think, first off, all cards on the table.
Yeah.
Mario, do you agree that Christian McCaffery is a more explosive player than Devin Singletary?
110%. This
even
is not a question.
Even
this is not a question about who is a better player when he's on the field and healthy. It's no question what Christian McCaffery would do for this high octane Buffalo Bills offense. That's not what we're debating today. That's not a debate. That shouldn't be a debate for anybody. If you have Devin Singletary and Christian McCaffery on the field, who is the more dynamic player? Obviously, it's going to be Christian McCaffery. We're talking about other factors that go into this if it's a possible move for the Buffalo Bills. Now, I just want to say real quick, when he was in Carolina, Bean did say that McCaffrey was his best pick in Carolina. I mean, I don't think it's his best pick overall because you have 17 back there now.
Yeah.
But the point is, when he was in Carolina, he said that was one of his best picks. So just to put that on the table for everybody as well.
Right. But I mean, some context there, right? That doesn't mean that it's still the best pick in total, right? You're absolutely right. Josh Allen obviously tops that list now. But, you know, the truth of the matter is Christian McCaffrey coming out of college, I mean, this is a guy who saw an absolute ton of carries and has carried that offense for years at this point. And when he isn't healthy or isn't on the field, that team is abysmal. They're not very good this year either, right? So there's a lot going on down in Carolina that says that they might pull the ripcord on Christian McCaffrey and just try and get out of it. But with what he'd be asked to do in Buffalo, is it too much of a dynamic shift? Like, or maybe it's too much of a player, right? So let me give an example, right? Yeah. Would Christian McCaffrey have the same impact as if Baltimore cut Kenyon Drake?
I think he would be asked.
Excuse me.
I think he'd be asked to do more in Baltimore because of that. What Greg Roman has there. I think for McCaffrey's sake, you want to talk about it. I'm just going on when he was healthy in Carolina for 2017, 2018, and 2019. He had 623 attempts and 303 receptions. So that's 900 touches by the guy.
Yeah.
For McCaffrey's sake, he would want to come to Buffalo because it would extend his career with the amount of usage that happens. So
totally
for him,
agree with that.
He would totally want to come to Buffalo. It's going to be a winning franchise, and he wouldn't be asked to be the guy.
Right.
So
Yep.
For his sake, he would want to come here. Yeah.
Totally agree. Right. But the impact to the team, if you're Buffalo, doesn't it like Kenyon Drake's an explosive player, right? He's got speed for days, right? But we saw them try and do that with Breida, who also a pretty fast running back, right? And it really just didn't work out, right? That faster back situation just wasn't really the right fit necessarily. Like Kenyon Drake is speed for days. Matt Breida is pretty fast. Christian McCaffrey is not as fast as he used to be, right? And with that, I want to talk about some of the stats because this is where things get a little hairy for me. Here we go. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey's rushing attempts so far this season. There we go. Well, hey, Mar, welcome back, buddy.
You froze for a second, by the way.
I froze for a second?
Yeah, just for 1 second.
Oh, okay. So here's when we look at the stats so far this year, right?
Yep.
Devin Singletary, 57 rushing attempts. Not many, right? When you start talking about how many weeks we are into the season, right?
True.
57 rushing attempts. 256 yards. It's 4.5 yards per carry. No touchdowns. 23 yards is the long rush. Well, let's talk about CMC. 85 attempts through as many weeks. 393 yards. Same carry average, 4.6 yards per carry. 2 touchdowns, a long of 49. So we're talking a long almost double. But again, you're talking 30 more carries, right?
Yeah.
Still same yards per carry average. Well, Devin Singletary has sneakily been helping the Bills in the receiving game, more so than he ever has. So Singletary, 22 receptions, 167 yards in the air, 7.6 yards per reception. It should be yards per catch. 1 TD, again, long of 22. Devin Singletary is not a game breaker. I think we all know that.
Yes.
When you look at CMC, again, through the same number of weeks, 11 more receptions, 100 more yards. He is averaging more yards per catch, but the long catch is 49 yards. Again, double Devin Singletary's. So I think that highlights the explosive factor of Christian McCaffrey is very different. But is that really what this team ultimately needs? This team can score from anywhere. Like the Kansas City game was a great example that Gabe Davis catches a bomb, touchdown. Dawson Knox catches a bomb, touchdown. Stephon Diggs works, touchdown, right? Like, do you have to have an explosive running back for this offense to work? Because they're averaging over 4 yards a carry. To me, it works.
it's the one side of me says if you can get a player like that and you can make the numbers work, you do it.
Yeah.
But the way that it works right now, I mean, you got Devin Singletary is on pace to have 725 yards rushing and 473 yards receiving. The other point of that is that he's on pace to have 80 receptions.
Yeah.
I mean, that would equal McCaffrey's rookie year. I mean, and I think you really do. We would be remiss if we didn't compare the two ball clubs. You know what I mean? Like McCaffrey is the centerpiece of that offense, no question. And they've been a bad team. They've been leads that they haven't had. They've been losing games and this and that. So McCaffrey is going to see more of the ball in a more of a receiver role. The fact that he has more rushes as well is kind of shocking to me. When you look at it. But Devin Singletary not even having 10 carries per game. That's what you ask the guy to do. Now it's a stark contrast in what we're used to. Usually when we see running backs in contract years, they get driven into the ground.
Yeah, they sure do.
That's not how this offense is set up. The offense is not set up to do that. And they're gonna say, okay, no matter who's in there, this is what we're gonna do. I think Bean and McDermott are very content with recycling that position with younger players and younger talent. Hence, you burn a second round pick on Cook, which if you get McCaffrey, stunts the kid's growth, does it not?
Yeah. I agree with you. And the truth is, right? If we've always talked about how Devin Singletary is a volume runner, right? He always has been. In college, he was a volume runner. In the pros, he's a volume runner. And he ultimately gets stronger as the game goes on. Right? He really does.
You see him in the third and fourth, he's not slowing down at all. And I don't think that's just because of a lack of touches either. I think that's just how he is.
I agree wholeheartedly. I completely agree with you. So adding a player like McCaffrey completely negates what Devin Singletary does for you at the back end of games, right?
True.
And then you end up with the Zach Moss situation. The truth of the matter is maybe Moss is a volume runner, right? But he's so ineffective early that you just can't risk giving him those carries. Cook, on the other hand, you could put him in situations where, you're just looking to get him touches the 35% of the time that he's on the field, and you manufacture those touches for Cook because you got to get him some volume at an NFL level. This team's huge on time on task. You got to get Cook time on task. So you got to get him carries. I agree with you. Adding Christian McCaffery just makes things muddier for a team that really doesn't run the ball often enough for you to need a player like that. Does it make your team better?
Yeah.
Dynamically, absolutely. But do you have to give up part of next year's draft class that you're going to need to start replacing some of this talent you're not going to be able to afford? I mean, I don't know anymore, man. I would have thought that in the Kansas City game, Christian McCaffery as a player would have made a huge impact. But but Devin Singletary did exactly what the running backs are asked to do for this team.
Yeah. It's the system is too. I mean, like, for example, if we're talking about adding a Saquon Barkley versus a Christian McCaffrey, now we have to realize that the addition of Christian McCaffrey would bolster this passing game even more so than it is now. But do you really need, like you said, Davis, Knox, Diggs? You're moving Diggs around in the slot and stuff like that. That'd be something that maybe CMC would be asked to do. You put him in the slot, you do a bunch of different things. He's not a pounder inside the tackles.
No.
To give your offense a new dynamic that you need when you start to plateau during the season. Barkley, now let me put this on the table. Dable's not getting rid of him.
No.
He's not getting rid of Barkley. Okay. That's probably something that he's wanted. That's the centerpiece of that offense with Daniel Jones. Barkley is the centerpiece. If you had a Barkley on this team, and we're talking about him, he offers a new dynamic to your offense. He's a guy that could run inside the tackles and take it 80. McCaffrey just adds more to your passing game than I think your running game right now. Now, Singletary runs inside the tackles, I think, maybe a little bit better than McCaffrey would.
I agree.
Maybe would he see the hole and be able to break it 80? Yes. If there's a hole and McCaffrey hits it, he's going 80. Singletary's not like that. He's the guy that's going to wear down the defense and help you control the ball a little bit more. Now, you're probably saying, well, if you go 80 and score, what do you need to control the ball for?
But that's not every time.
No,
right?
It's not every time. But what
that's
I'm saying
not every time.
like you said, in the aspect of what you're asked to do from the running back position in this offense, Singletary is doing it. Now, I think Bean has been trying to look for a McCaffery type.
Mhm.
Now, Cook is an explosive player. We just haven't really seen it so much,
Mhm.
but he could be that receiving, run inside the tackles threat that you need without having to extend yourself for Christian McCaffery. Added all the guys you have to re-sign. You
Well,
can't.
I totally agree with you, Mark. One of the things about going into the playoffs at the NFL level, and we'll kind of have to close this episode with that,
Yeah.
is when you start looking at what makes teams win in the playoffs. They talk about teams hitting their stride. The
Yeah.
fact is, you have to have dynamic changes going into the final part of that season and into the playoffs.
Yep.
And by the time James Cook has that time on task, he'll be a bigger part of this offense and be another weapon for teams to have to prepare for. You're not seeing it now because they really don't need it, right?
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity to prepare him for a larger role. He will have a larger role come the playoffs. And again, that's another dynamic athlete that you'll have to prepare for. And with far less tape, far less carries, to me, adding Christian McCaffery, while very enticing, the truth of the matter is it's a guy with a ton of carries. And in this situation, I don't think you need that experience. You got Devin Singletary.
Yeah.
I don't think you need the experience.
Yeah, just really quick for everyone else that wants to talk about giving up assets for Christian McCaffery as far as draft capital goes. Remember, you're essentially giving up your second round pick last year in James Cook because McCaffery has 3 years left on his deal. So will Cook.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Great
essentially burning a second round pick in James Cook as well. You know,
Yep.
So just keep that in mind.
All right, Mar. I think that does it for us, brother.
We are out of here.
All
Have
right.
a
Thank you
great
to
week,
Mr. Rogers
everybody.
Homes for sponsoring the show. Go
Yeah.
Bills. Enjoy your bye week. Don't end up in the hospital. It's Bills Mafia, man. Listen.
Yes.
We've
Go to
all
Home
been there.
Depot. All right, we got it. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, Realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth? And right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!